So the big news today is that the Kerch bridge has been hit for a second time. And you know, what's fascinating about this is I just talked about it yesterday. Now, it's not because I'm prophetic, but and I'm going to show you how this is carried in RT, what Russia is saying about this. But I want to show you something from just yesterday. Here's my weekly update. So it is Sunday, July 16th. I'm just going to go through the headlines to kind of give you a sense of what has happened over the last week in Ukraine and Russia. So I go through all the headlines for the week. I started last Saturday and ended this Saturday. It was Sunday that I was doing this video. Listen to this. Forces are planning fresh attacks in Russia. This will be good to keep the Russians kind of off balance. Ukraine admits blowing up the Kerch bridge on day 500. Hanna Maliar called it a first strike on the bridge to disrupt supply lines. That would seem to imply that there are more strikes coming. Okay, how about that? And here is a CNN today talking about exactly that. 273 days ago, we launched the first strike on the Crimean bridge to disrupt Russian logistics. Telegram message also mentioned the sinking of the Russian warship Moskva 451 days ago and the liberation of Snake Island 373 days ago. Yeah, so they were claiming responsibility. Okay, so what exactly does it look like with the Kerch bridge? We can look at, I looked at a bunch of news media about it in the Western press, and here's the most relevant thing that you need to see. If you've watched other channels, you've seen this, so I'm only going to show a few seconds of it. Okay, this is somebody in the train going by. So yeah, this is pretty damaged. I mean, that's not supposed to look like that, right? It seems like something hit the pylon beneath the bridge that disrupted the platform, and that's what we seem to think happened at this point. And so this is the same video that you're going to see elsewhere. This is in the Sun on YouTube. But apparently there was some kind of explosion. The Russians even admit that there was some kind of explosion. And I don't know who's got this video at night that captured that, but yeah, there was something. Okay, and this is the aftermath. Okay, so what's important to me is the Russian side, but I want to give a shout out to the enforcer who was Johnny on the spot last night. This is where I first saw it. The bridge is down again. And then a little while later, I started looking for things, and I found old things like Ryan McMeth's Can Ukraine Strike and things along those lines. And then finally, Constantine came on. He was the last one that I watched before I went to sleep last night. This was like 11 o'clock when this was starting to be breaking news at 11 o'clock New York time, East Coast time. Okay, and so now what's interesting to me is how it was carried in the Russian media. Initially, and Constantine talked about this, initially traffic stopped on the Crimean bridge due to an emergency. And what he saw in his Russian sources were either emergency or accident. That's the kind of language that he saw. Traffic has been suspended on the bridge, which connects Crimea with mainland Russia due to an unspecified emergency. Unverified reports on Telegram claim that there was an explosion, and generally they just kind of use these emergency and accident euphemisms. But then, before I go on to that, let me show you one more thing. So the language that they used in the video was really interesting. So here's one video.
Mother and father have been killed, and their child said to be in a critical condition after what's described as an emergency situation on the Crimean bridge.
Okay, they're still talking about emergency system, and that's because it is 2:36 a.m., and that's when they're talking about this originally. Later, they're going to shift. Oh, by the way, did you hear that? A mother and father have been killed. Now, that's terrible for humanity. Like, I absolutely, my heart aches for innocents that are hurt, but at the same time, they're not going to think anything of the mother and father that are killed multiple times in multiple places when Russia retaliates for this. They're going to be giving it to the terrorists really good when they hit a apartment building that has nothing but civilians in it in a little bit. But notice how they frame that to humanize it. Okay, now that was 2:36 in the morning. Here we are at 8:29, where they had some time to put this together. Now in RT, it says the Russian Foreign Ministry highlighted Washington and London's role. Washington and London's role? Yes, because this is a terrorist attack and Washington and London are behind it. This regime, the Ukrainian government, is terrorist and has all the hallmarks of an international organized crime group. Of course, it's Russia's president that's wanted by The Hague. It's not Washington and Kyiv, but okay. The ministry said on social media, sharing a post by its spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova. Ukrainian officials and military personnel take those decisions with the direct input from American and British special services and politicians. The U.S. and Britain are managing a state-like terrorist structure, the statement added. The rest of the report wasn't useful. There was nothing that provided any insight. One last video by RT, and this actually was somewhat useful to understand how the Russians are thinking. Now, before I play this, listen for how many times they say terrorist or terrorism in this video clip. I'm going to provide a little ding every time they do. So let's listen to what they have to say. Here we go.
An emergency situation on the Crimea bridge, which has claimed the lives of 2 people and injured a young girl, has now been declared a terrorist act by Russian authorities. All traffic on the key route has since been halted. Let's get more details now.
Okay, so it is a terrorist act. Just wrap that around your mind. Doesn't matter that we just had 3 days of drone strikes that didn't hit anything military because Putin was throwing a tantrum about the NATO conference, right? This was a terrorist act.
Now from our correspondent Donald Quarter. Donald, we've spoken about this for the last number of hours, but only recently was it declared a terror act. Take us through what occurred today.
Well, as you said, we've now got official confirmation from both Russia's investigative committee and Russia's anti-terrorism committee that this was, in fact, a terrorist attack carried out by Kiev's forces using drones. We also heard from the Russian...
You can say terrorist attack all you want, but that doesn't make it so. I could say I'm deodorant stick. That doesn't make me deodorant stick. This is not terrorist attack.
Foreign Ministry spokeswoman, actually, Maria Zakharova, who echoed the findings of these reports. She said that the Kiev government is a terrorist regime propped up by the UK and the US. Let's take a listen.
Today's attack on the Crimea bridge was carried out by the Kiev regime, which is a terrorist regime and has all the signs of an international organized criminal group. Decisions are made by Ukrainian officials and the military, with the direct participation of American and British intelligence agencies and politicians. The United States and Britain...
So you just heard that. They're echoing that. That's going to be the official message. Constantine was really insightful last night. He was saying, well, they haven't said much yet, but that's because they have to get on message. And what they'll do is they'll send out, and go watch Constantine's live stream. Play it at 2 times, and you'll hear it at about the right speed because he speaks very slowly. Right, and you'll be able to get through it pretty quickly. But he was talking about, yeah, they'll send out something with the talking points, say this, don't say that, and they're on message. I got to give them that.
Are leading a terrorist state structure.
These statements actually came not too long after the first train since this terrorist attack took place successfully crossed over the Crimea bridge. And actually, we've got footage on your screen right now. That was taken by one of the passengers in one of those first trains that were able to get over the Crimean bridge. And what we're looking at, why this video is significant, is because it seems to confirm what the Russian Transport Ministry was saying about the fact that only the road on the bridge was actually seriously damaged. That's despite reports earlier going on, that unconfirmed, of course, that were saying that there was some sort of critical damage made towards the foundation of the bridge. So now
and that's what people thought early on, that it was like the pylons beneath it must have been blown out from underneath it, but it doesn't look like that. It does look like one of the pavement areas has semi-collapsed.
These reports were inaccurate. Now, in terms of what people were saying around the time of this attack, Ukrainian media actually was earlier, before these official confirmations came out, Ukrainian media was saying that this indeed was a Ukrainian attack carried out by drones. They said this as well before we got official confirmation that this was a...
And what's interesting about this was yesterday, the Russians were also bragging about how they had shot down all the drones that were in Crimea. Well, maybe, I don't know if this was connected or not, This is just speculation, but maybe that was to kind of distract from what was happening here as what appears to be some sort of underwater drone. We don't know that that's the fact, but that's what the leading argument is at this point, and that could change.
Terrorist attack from the Russian authorities. But we also heard the head of the Crimean parliament actually accuse Ukraine of just exactly what we've heard in these official statements as well. He said that this was a Ukrainian terrorist attack, especially because of
how many times did he say terrorist attack? Right? Wow. How many times can you say terrorist attack?
The fact that this bridge is essentially a civilian installation. And the head of the Crimean parliament said that there's no way the Ukrainians would not have known that it would have been exclusively civilians on this bridge at this time.
Well, yes. Okay, so that's an interesting argument. Yes, exclusively civilians. You have to be able to take it down at a time where you can take it down. And so the timing just is dedicated to that. But it is a main artery for Russia to get things in and out. The only other way that they're going to have is to go through the temporarily occupied oblasts. So it is a legitimate target in that sense.
Of July, it's peak holiday season. Monday morning, people coming to and from the Crimean Peninsula.
See how terroristy they are? That's what they're trying to build the case for.
A really popular tourist destination. And on that, perhaps we believe two holidaymakers. We can't confirm whether they were on holidays, but we know a couple are dead.
That's correct. Unfortunately, we have...
And they're trying to humanize it and talk about how holiday-like or vacation-like this Crimean Peninsula is going to be, and it's not going to be that way for long.
Official confirmation, specifically from the governor of Russia's Belgorod region, that two people were killed. They were a couple, a mother and a father. And the authorities are trying to get in touch with their relatives, not just to inform them of this unfortunate this tragedy, but also the fact that another tragedy took place. Their daughter was in the car with them, and she was injured as a result of this attack. She's right now in hospital, being looked after by doctors. We've actually read in reports that she's not in critical condition. She's in middle condition.
That's something good to hear about this. We know that an air ambulance lifted her to hospital. Something you mentioned earlier as well, Donald.
If I could see 100th of the empathy that they have here, and for what was actually very sad, right? But if I could see 100th of the empathy here for what's about to happen to Ukrainians minding their own business in apartment buildings in Ukraine in the next few days when Russia does whatever they do to retaliate, I'd be impressed. But we won't see that.
About clarification, confirmation that this was done by Ukrainian forces. We know that there were previous attacks on this same structure, this same crossing. It was denied at that stage by Ukrainian authorities, then confirmed later. So we do know that there is previous two attacks here.
That's correct.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. That's the Ukrainians were behind this. I mean, nobody's arguing, well, who was it? I wonder.
There was another attack in October of last year where, like you said, the Ukrainian authorities did not come out to confirm it. It's only after the following months that we started seeing Ukrainian officials, Ukrainian media personalities coming out and essentially owning up to the fact that they carried out this attack.
And it essentially couldn't be denied.
Exactly. It was completely undeniable. And their justification was that this was some sort of military target because they claimed that the Russian military was using this bridge to supply troops in the Ukraine conflict. But I mean, the only people who died in that previous attack as well were civilians. 5 civilians were killed in that terrorist attack. And again, we're seeing 2 people, civilians, killed, and another young girl, unfortunately, injured as a result of that. So it just looks like Kiev's after this bridge, and they're willing to go to any lengths to destroy it, even terrorism.
Yeah, it is the crossing that links the Crimea.
Yep, they sure are. They're willing to go to any length to stop the Russians who are in their country. That's pretty fair. Okay, so you heard it here. This is the way that the Russians are seeing, framing, trying to propagate this to the rest of the world, because what's carried in RT is going to go into African and Asian and Middle Eastern and other newspapers around the world. All right, that's all that I have for right now. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine. I'll be back tomorrow. I hope you will be too. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. Please give this a like if you want to share it.